Back everyone to Arjun. This is going to be episode 3. Today's topic is going to be on Adderall, it's going to be on ADHD, and the stimulant crisis that I think a lot of us find ourselves in today. Spencer, do you want to talk more about the issue?
Yeah, thanks for coming back, everybody. It's good to be here again. Um, yeah, so stimulants. I'm taking one right now, a lovely cup of coffee here. I think about 80 milligrams of caffeine. I just want to start talking about coffee. You drink coffee, right?
From time to time, the issue is that my caffeine tolerance is at rock bottom. If I take, I think, even a shot of espresso, the rest of my day is ruined. I won't go to bed until like 12 a.m., which I guess is typical for some people. But yeah, caffeine, not my cup of tea. Let's say that.
Right. No, I get it. But no tea. It's like 15 milligrams of caffeine per cup, I think, right?
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah. So I think on average, I'm in healthcare, so we all hate ourselves, I guess. I'm at 3 or 4 cups a day, which is, if I can do the pocket square math here, that's about 300 milligrams, give or take. Some would say that would be bad.
I would say that would be bad, but I'm not the healthcare professional here.
No, no, no. But I wanted to leave with the example of I think a lot of people our age are taking stimulants, and that could be energy drinks, coffee. Cigarettes are making a comeback. That's interesting. Vapes. Um, I mean, I'm guilty of cigars, maybe, but you know, I wanted to know why. Why is everyone so interested in all of this, all these stimulants?
Hmm. My guess is that it has something to do with work-life balance and kind of the path that a lot of people are suggested and driven to walk for their career. It's become, I think, very typical for people to take a 9 to 5 job and they work long hours or overtime all the time. And so much of their life becomes about their work that they need some way to cope with it. At least that's what I think initially. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as a performance enhancer, right? I'm tired pretty frequently. Uh, I don't probably get as much sleep as I should, but I have coffee, and my adenosine receptors, I can modify them with caffeine to say, haha, you don't work anymore, you know? You're in neuro, you understand. And then I can keep performing at a pretty high level for an extra few hours a day. So it's borrowed time. It's borrowed time. Stimulants give you borrowed time.
Yeah. I have used stimulants only a few times in my life. Caffeine is probably the most common one that I've used. Whenever I take one, I always feel like I'm getting pulled 15 different ways at all times. I can't even focus on doing work, can't focus on class, things like that, because it's just a little too much for me. But in your experience, Spencer, do you actually enjoy taking stimulants, or is it something you feel you just need to do to get on with your day?
It depends heavily on what kind of day it is. Um, if I'm at the office or whatever it is at work for I don't know 16 hours, yeah, I'm drinking coffee to stay awake, right? But I think both of us can agree. A really good, remarkably good cup of coffee worth every penny.
I like drinking coffee myself. I think it tastes nice, which is why I'm a big fan of decaf. But decaf isn't that common, even in coffee shops. I feel like the best place to get decaf and the most consistent is probably just at your local supermarket where they sell the instant coffee decaf stuff. But I think this also leads us to another point in this topic. It's taking things recreationally and what kind of impact that could have on addiction.
Yeah, I would say I can't remember where this quote's coming from, but we've been called an energy drink culture. Every culture and every society has their vice. For some it's alcohol, like Russia. For some, it might be marijuana or cocaine. If I'm in the Andes or Afghanistan. But for us in America, and I'll say the West on the whole right now, you're in Canada, so I can't say us, but it's caffeine. It really is caffeine. Um, and I think that might be a problem because people keep needing more of caffeine, of a stimulant, for it to continue to have the same effect. I could tell you full stop, I'm addicted to caffeine. But there's no way to deny it.
Yeah, my condolences. I know a lot of people who are, and it's not a fun addiction. With regards to your intuition that energy drink consumption is increasing, I just looked it up. The title of the article is The Prevalence and Characterization of Energy Drink Consumption in North America, a Systematic Review. They have found that in studies of university students, weekly energy drink consumptions above 60% was recorded, and ED consumption was associated with being male, and a co-consumption of alcohol, tobacco, and weed.
Yeah, I mean, you hop on the gravy train, it's easier to stay on it. I wouldn't say coffee and marijuana are the same, but I'd say you're closer to marijuana with coffee than you are with water.
Yeah, Spencer, as someone who's studying medicine, what are the underlying mechanisms of addiction, if you have any idea?
I mean, like, if I'm going like DSM-5, what's an addiction? There's a reliance on it. There's a change. I mean, I can't quote it word for word here, but there's a reliance on it. You have to have it. You modify your routine to have it. Generally, it has like it's seen as having like a negative or a harmful impact on your life, and caffeine is one of those addictions where it's so normalized that it's to some a virtue to you know stay awake, keep pushing, keep drinking coffee. You know, and it's strange. It's very strange, but an addiction requires a few components. Yeah.
Do you think it's really possible to recreationally try some drugs without ever really sliding into addiction? Like, I know it's possible for a lot of drugs, but for these kind of stimulants, do you think it's possible to toe the line?
I think, well, for starters, I've never taken any sort of drugs besides caffeine, so I can't speak from experience. But I'll give you a snippet of history. Tea drinking first started in, these um, among monks because they would be praying for hours and hours and hours. So they would drink green tea in Asia. They would drink green tea to stay awake, to continue praying. In Africa, you saw the same thing where you had goat herders finding their goats were eating these random berries and they got really excited, right? These really excitable goats. So they mixed it with animal fat and coffee and they had these energy bites, and that was in Ethiopia, I believe. Um, so humanity has a historical record of using these substances, specifically stimulants, in order to function better. What that function is, I want you to define. What's that function?
Function better? Probably just, I think, to focus better, to place their attention in more relevant situations so that they can get the work that they need done. Because I think, based on my studies in cognitive science, there are a lot of ways that we can kind of drift from our current point of attention. Right? So your cognitive system is always trying to minimize uncertainty. This is a predictive processing or active inference framework. And because of that, it's constantly changing, it's trying to drift its point of attention to capture as much relevant information in the environment as possible. And that's why sometimes when you're sitting in class, you just start daydreaming. It's because your cognitive system uses opponent processing. It uses the loosening of your focus and the tightening of your focus kind of back and forth so that you can get as much relevant information in your environment as possible.
Yeah, that's important information capture, right? Um, Caffeine, the whole point of it, from what I'm aware, is you heighten your senses. You can be distracted. You can have enough of it, you'll start to show ADHD-like symptoms. As I'm sitting here drinking coffee, I can tell it's kicking in, you know. Um, but I would say, you know, can you use a stimulant, caffeine, we'll say, recreationally on the one off to improve your work? Sure. But I think it depends on your personality and if you're the sort of person that becomes reliant on that sort of thing. Because I know certainly I am, you know.
I think it's important to also talk about, since we're talking about stimulants, to talk about its use and most specifically the use of this kind of stuff in academic culture. I think a lot of people I know use it. I'm sure a lot of people you know use it as well.
Yeah, I mean, in academia, there's this. I mean, classical. You're talking about like papers, academia, right?
I'm talking about just academic culture in general. A lot of people in academia, I think, use this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. I mean, if you're on the undergrad level of uni, you're using it. If you're a grad student, Lord knows you're using caffeine or something to get through. And as a professor, you're expected to put out how many papers? How much work that is? Yeah.
A lot of work, yeah. A
And there's
lot of
this
work.
expectation in academia of you're always productive, you're always moving forwards. And that's not how the human brain works, but that's how we're forcing it to, you know?
Yeah. I pulled up a paper here titled Adderall on the Razor's Edge of ADHD treatment, enhanced academic and physical performance, addiction, psychosis, and death. And the authors of this paper write that even though it's medically approved for managing ADHD, right, and treating narcolepsy, it has a high abuse and addiction potential and should be taken only if medically prescribed. But unfortunately, there is a lot of off-label use.
Yeah, I mean, Adderall culture, that's, yeah. I know, I have friends that use Adderall, right? I'm sure you do too. Um, and
Yeah,
they start using it because they need that extra leg up. They need to study more, work harder, but then they can't get off of it. That's the scary part. You can't get off of it because, well, when you get off of it, my God, the crash.
yeah. It's kind of like your cognitive system becomes so dependent on this crutch, becomes so reliant on this external drug that your cognitive system kind of extends to involve this drug. And when it leaves your system, your whole body is kind of crippled. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
It's withdrawal. Your body is revolting. You're like, hey, man, I liked this chemical. What are you doing? You know, nicotine withdrawal, methamphetamine withdrawal, you know, any sort of substance that's a performance enhancer. Your body hates you. You're like, hey, man, why'd you turn off the good stuff? So, yeah, your body rebels. I'd be surprised if it didn't.
Yeah, I think we can also talk about this a little bit more philosophically, right? Let's let's take the paradigm, one of the active paradigms in cognitive science right now, which is a 4E cogsci paradigm, states that your cognition is enacted, embedded, extended, and embodied. Yeah. Basically, what this means is that you live in the world, you interact with your environment, and your cognition is not contained just in your brain, but it also exists kind of outside your brain. It exists between you and your environment. When you take a drug or substance, I think that, and you do it often to the point where it becomes a habit, your cognitive system treats it as part now of that very system. And this is the extended part coming into play. It becomes so integral to your cognitive system's functions, and it becomes such a crutch that it basically becomes something you can't live without, or something that's very difficult to live without.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've hit addiction treatment and the philosophy behind it right on the nose. I would say what's unique about stimulants, I'll say recreational grade stimulants, caffeine, nicotine, um, less so nicotine now, but it's societally acceptable, which makes it so different from any other drug. You know, how many years ago was prohibition? Like that was what, the 1930s. You know, there was a time when alcohol wasn't acceptable here.
Yeah, I think it was the 20s and 30s.
Yeah. So But caffeine culture, there's Adderall culture, which is high performance, high stress, right? But
Hmm.
caffeine culture, I don't know how you get around being surrounded by it. I mean, even coffee chats, what's that?
Yeah, it's actually interesting how normalized coffee has become in our society, and excuse me, to that extent, alcohol as well. Even though alcohol is a seriously dangerous drug, at least I think as dangerous as marijuana. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not entirely sure on that one, but it is dangerous. It's interesting to see how normalized they've become in our society to the point where it's just socially acceptable to be drinking coffee all the time. It's socially acceptable to be drinking alcohol very often.
And that's the crux, right? If I have a 3 coffee lunch, my boss might look at me a little strange. It's like, you good? You got problems at home? You know, 3 martini lunch? I'm fired, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at it this way. How do we rectify the insane reliance on stimulants in our culture?
Well, I think you have, yeah, as a country, well, I keep saying that like you're still in the States. Um,
We're all part
as
of one big country.
Yeah, yeah. As a society, and societies broadly, we have to look at where we came from and where we're going. 996 culture over in China. Why don't you describe it briefly, please?
Okay. Yeah, it's the idea that you're expected to work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week, and obviously that doesn't leave much time for your own personal life.
No time at all. And the big crux of 996 is that if you don't do it, somebody else will, and they'll do it gladly and for less pay. So there's this threat, this constant threat of being replaced. And that's, I fear, the direction we're heading, right? And the direction we came from is from France, where they just don't work during August. Like, good luck trying to talk to a French firm in August. They're just not going to answer your email. They're not there.
Yeah, the French have really, really understood work life balance, I think, in a way that we don't see in many other places in the world. Part of that, I think, is because their labor laws are really, really strong. Unions are protected by the state and all this kind of stuff. I think the average work week is 35 hours. I'm going to look it up, but I think it's 35 hours.
That's right. I for the listener, they should know. Arjun and I spent some time in Europe. What was this? 2 years ago now, right?
Was it 2 years? Holy
Yeah,
shit,
2 years.
man.
But we spent some time in France and some time in Spain, and along this hiking path, the Camino de Santiago, there is a woman who, was talking to me about, how do you work? How much do you work? I'm like, oh, maybe 80, 90 hours a week. And she looked at me like I'd shot her. She's like, 80 hours a week? When do you have time for your, like, athletic recreations? And I'm like, what? I don't have time for breakfast most days.
Yeah, I don't know how they managed to do it while still keeping society productive. 'Cause, their economy is pretty substantial, at least by GDP, I think, and somehow they managed to keep it all going. I think maybe there is a serious difference in culture between North America, some other places in the world, and France.
They think we're crazy. And I'm being honest when I say that. They think we're a bunch of crazy workaholics because they saw Wolf of Wall Street once and think that's the average, that's the average North American. That might not be wrong, but
Okay, I have looked it up, and it's debatable whether France actually has a 35-hour on average work week. So I won't definitively say that they have less of a work week than us on average, but from my own experiences and from what I've heard from other people, I think that their work-life balance is better than ours in North America.
yeah. I should add, obviously, there's certain industries that have better or worse balance. If someone's banking for BNP Paribas, obviously they're going to be working more than 40 hours a week. Um, but I'll say you see more of that crazy work culture here on the whole for the average citizen versus, just your whatever top performing white collar folks across the pond.
Yep.
Because they got to keep up with our stock exchange, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Not to get too political here, but maybe some of the problems are built in our economic system, right? Maybe the desire to focus on the product rather than the process is harming how people ultimately live their lives, right? I mean, what is the point of an economic system anyway?
It's a means of, I mean, if you talk about a system that's regulated, it's making sure the wheels keep turning, you know? Um, because having an economy is nice. I like eating bread, perhaps soup sometime, you know, I'm a happy peasant.
That's a hot take. I'm not sure if many would agree that eating bread is a good thing.
Well, the better the Marie Antoinette said what? Let them eat cake, you know. I'll eat
Yeah,
anything, man.
let them eat their cake. Okay, by the way, I'm not sure if it comes across well, but I was being sarcastic there. I think eating bread is a great thing.
The gluten mafia is coming for you, Arjun. The gluten
Yeah.
free. They want their rice crackers, damn you.
I heard them knocking at my door and I realized, no, I gotta take that back. I've gotta clear things up. No.
No, I mean, the point of an economic system should be to serve those within it. You know, in all seriousness, that's why union labor was so important, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. Have you read it?
I have not read it, but I've heard of it.
But you're aware of what happened in Chicago's meatpacking yards in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you had immigration that came to the States looking for life, and the women became prostitutes, and the men became wage slaves. And that's not a great economic system, right?
No. The point of an economic system, I think, especially if it's run by the government, is to promote the well-being of people, to give them the means to pursue their own interests. But unfortunately, under our current economic system, it's become so twisted to the point where people work and work and work and work for some far-off goal that they'll never reliably achieve. I mean, retirement ages are getting higher and higher and higher, and the the point of a job should be to, I think, maybe I'm just a complete idealist, should be to give you a way to productively add to society or to pursue your own goals in a productive way while still giving you the means to enjoy your life currently, right? It's all about the journey and not just the destination.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a good economic system is everyone chips in, they all have a role, they do the role, you go home, you know? Um, and it's a shame because we really denigrate certain roles here, you know, of maintenance personnel, blue collar work, for, as recent memory serves, up until recently was looked down upon, you know? And then now you have college grads making less than half of what blue collar workers make. So it's very, very interesting, very interesting. You know, what value do you add to a society? And you can increase that value theoretically by working more hours, right?
I guess this leads us back to why Adderall and other stimulants have become so popular. Is because society has placed, in my opinion, undue emphasis on working and working and working and working, producing and producing and producing and producing, rather than giving people the means by which to enjoy their life, to find meaning in their lives, to pursue their own goals. And as we just become all cogs in this machine, it becomes more and more difficult for us to take it all in without resorting to external help.
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example. The Model T was built by a fellow, Henry Ford, and he developed something called like a factory assembly line, right? And that meant that people could afford cars because you could make them a heck of a lot cheaper and faster by using pre-assembled parts and people doing one thing over and over and over, right? He wasn't the first person to use mass production, but for his specific deal, he used technology to make people more efficient. The issue is that changed in the 1950s because the pressure was no longer on, you know, the manufacturer or the company, because everyone's working in an office now. The pressure to be more productive falls on the worker. You have to be more efficient yourself. You have to work harder. You have to skip your lunch break and work through it. You know, so I think
Right.
that's why these stimulants are so widely used because you're faced with this insurmountable hurdle of always being more efficient, and that's impossible. You know, we're apes that go bald in our 30s. You know, come on.
Yeah, yeah. It's, if I can take more of a cognitivist perspective here once again, based on some papers that I've read, including a paper by Miller, Kiverstein, and Rietfeld called Embodying Addiction: A Predictive Processing Account. There are views of addiction that are based on our desire to find a coherent worldview. If I can just explain this for a second, and bear with me here. I feel like I've used the phrase cognitive system like 50 times in this episode. Our cognitive system wants to understand the world. It likes to know that its accuracy, its internal model, is high. So, when we live in a noisy world, like when we're worked to the bone as wage slaves, when we're just cogs in the machine, our environment is so full of error, and our personal cognitive system sees that our body is breaking down as unhealthy and understands and attributes that as error in our model. We're not doing well. We're unhealthy. But substances like these provide a crutch to tell your system that, hey, no, actually, you're doing well. Right? Your worldview, your internal model is accurate. They help you focus because they allow you to attune to a volatile and dynamic environment. And because you're more attuned to the environment, because you're more focused, your internal models will also be more accurate, generally.
Makes perfect sense to me. You know, hey, pilots still do. They would take stay awake pills, you know, caffeine mixed with acetaminophen and whatever other cocktail, right? And I know my model's working fine now because I'm focused. Well, sure, but it may not be good for you.
Yeah. At what point do we need to worry about addiction if we're ultimately using these in service of some goal down the road?
When people start dropping dead at work like they do in Japan, and our suicide rate continues to climb, our unemployment rate somehow remains constant despite being all the more productive, and I think listen, I'm not like a rile up the crowds person, but I don't think it's healthy the way society's going in this direction, and it concerns me greatly. But obviously, what am I to do? Maybe drink less coffee?
Drink less coffee, yeah, for one. Coffee is such a big industry at this point that I think if you drop out Spencer, they'll be okay.
Maybe. While he was saying that, I just took another swig of coffee, so like obviously I can't hold myself to my own morals.
I wonder what else I use that is not really necessary to helping me function in my daily life, but that I just adopt anyway. I mean, I drink from time to time. Probably don't need to do that. I'm not in a situation where my life is so shit that I need to take a swig of beer every Friday night to drown my sorrows.
Only a swig. Only a swig.
Only a swig. Well,
I would challenge you to find a bartender where if you said, look, pour me out a swig, they wouldn't throw you out of the bar. A swig, how dignified.
That's how you know. That's how you know how little experience I have.
No. No, I was at the orchestra last night, and I paid $18 for probably the worst Merlot I've had in a minute, because it tasted like, I'll say the tasting notes on it were plastic cup and Welch's grape juice. So, I mean, man, it was brutal.
Man, what a delight. Only the finest wines at the orchestra in Jefferson.
No, I shouldn't talk trash on them. It was Vivaldi's Four Seasons, and it was a wonderful, wonderful program. But man, they served my friend Buffalo Trace in a plastic cup, and he said the tasting notes were literally plastic cup. It was so bad, because the alcohol dissolves the cup. I mean, what do you do?
Yep.
Microplastics.
Yum. I know you've done some research on microplastics.
Tasty little aperitif. You know, hey guys, microplastics. Check out my paper on them. I forget what journal it's in, but yeah, it's in your food, it's in your water, it's in your blood, it's wherever else you've got tissue. I think it's in your brain too now. So, you know, at the office where I'm at, at hospital, um, we're finding them in atherosclerotic plaques. So now your heart attacks are sponsored by Nestle or whoever.
They're in your water, they're in the walls. You can
Yeah,
never escape.
vampires, ghouls even. No, but I kid. The Phantom Menace. I think we've been batting around is why should you care that people are using caffeine so much? And I'll say in a shorter answer, Arjun. Why should you care?
Care because addiction can really screw with your life. If you become dependent on something, an external drug to such a degree that you're unable to function in your life without it, and it has negative effects, which basically all drugs do, then you're putting yourself in under risk, right? Even pragmatically, do you really want to spend $5 on coffee every day for the rest of your life?
$5 bill. I spend $8 on halal food every day I go to work. So that's my addiction.
Yeah, but the halal food is worth it. Man, the halal food is worth it.
Dude, it is so. My halal man knows me somehow. Like, dude, it's so bad. I walk up and he's like, "I already got it, brother." It's so bad.
I would kill for a falafel over rice right now.
Actually, what's your halal order? Listeners should know, Arjun.
Okay, typically I just get a falafel wrap where I go because there are a bunch of halal food carts on St. George Street at the University of Toronto. But if I've really got time, I'll get some falafel over rice, get some white sauce and red sauce on it. I typically like to take it with a salad as well because I need to eat my veggies. I'm vegetarian, by the way, so I need to keep my diet balanced. Yeah, so I'll typically go with a falafel over rice.
Yeah, for reference, I mix it up. I'll either do the combo, which is the chicken and the lamb, but I've been feeling chicken shrimp lately. I don't know. Chicken shrimp's pretty good.
Chicken shrimp?
Yeah,
That's an
yeah.
interesting combination.
They have fried shrimp, slaps, but white sauce, extra red sauce, because I hate my life, and I get the salad as well. But like, this homie stacks it with onions, so like I have to have a mint or something after because I smell horrible.
Raw onions?
Yeah, oh yeah. Shout out to Amir Alam at the University of Pennsylvania. He sits right, oh god, right after you get out of the freshman quad, like you're walking onto the main campus. He's there
Mm-hmm.
on the left across from Spruce Street. So hit him up. He's a
Yeah,
homie.
you gotta take me there sometime.
Totally. No, but addiction to stimulants. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I was sitting last night thinking about before recording this. I'm like, man, I think this is probably a bad thing to take so long for me to observe this. But you know, it leaves you in this mindset of someone who uses stimulants all the time. Of I have to be more productive, I have to be better, I have to keep working, and like not Patrick Bateman type, but like, you know, you're never satisfied because you're always working, 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 and it really, oh, it vexes me, but it really devalues you as a person. And I think the biggest harm from caffeine isn't the heart palpitations, but the fact that you devalue yourself, and that's hard to get back, you know.
Yeah, I've never thought about it that way, but I guess when you do spend so much of your waking life just consuming and consuming these kind of drugs and these stimulants just to keep yourself going and going and going, you devalue your own health, you devalue your own time, you kind of it kind of cordons off your life into something that is meant to be spent working, rather than something that is beautiful, that should be taken slowly and with pause.
Exactly. I work. I love that I have a job. Being employed is nice. Thank you, employer, because I have money to do things. But I would say, you shouldn't draw your value of your life from your job. You get much more fulfillment out of like the stupid stuff you do on the side. I shouldn't even call it stupid. There you go, devaluing myself again. No, the wonderful things you do on the side.
Like this, for example.
Sure, I'm a real treat sometimes.
Yeah, apologies to all of our listeners who think our sense of humor is ass.
It's okay. It's okay. They have to deal with it. But, but no. I would say I would encourage everybody. A habit I started doing that you should do um, is take a half hour every day, because I know you have it, you're lying if you don't, and appreciate art, appreciate music, do something for yourself where you're creating something. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's a levee in this huge flood of consumption. The act of creation is beautiful. I mean, it's what sets us apart from the rest of the apes and gibbons, you know? So I'd encourage you to
Absolutely.
take that time to create.
Yeah, we talked about creativity, I think, a bit in our first episode. Just to revisit it here, we want people to be creative because I think it leads to more meaning in life. Appreciating the beautiful parts about life leads to a more meaningful life. It leads to a closer connection between you and your environment. It can lead to self transcendence, which is just the idea that you lose. It's kind of like ego death. You transcend your your sense of being just beyond your immediate body into your environment as well. It's kind of like love, right? When you love someone, you self transcend in some ways because you care so deeply about something other than yourself.
Yeah, the nose there. I'm gonna be transcending into another cup of coffee soon, but I think that might wrap us up for today. So thank you for listening to me ramble. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Also, for all the listeners out there, we heard your complaints. I got a new mic. Spencer will be getting a new mic soon.
I'm a rat bastard. I didn't, but I will. I promise.
He will, because I'm gonna force him to. Hopefully, my voice isn't so scratchy this time around. Hopefully, it's a little more clearer, and we hope that you guys find this new kind of style where we go back and forth a little more quicker, more entertaining.
They gave Morgan Freeman over here some cough drops.
I've been told that I should go into voice acting. Personally, I think it might be a good idea if I want to push myself through grad school.
I've heard worse ways to pay for grad school, so I say go for it.
All right, and with that, as Spencer said, I think that about wraps it up. Thanks again to everyone for tuning in and listening again.
Thank you. Ciao.